Welcome to I Got a Guy podcast, a podcast carefully designed to introduce a wide range of very talented and highly skilled professionals ready to share their knowledge and advice with you. Please welcome the host of I Got a Guy podcast, Michael Drelichars. Welcome to I Got a Guy podcast. I'm your host, Michael Drelichars. Thank you so much for being here. If you're a loyal subscriber, we appreciate your loyalty. And to our new listeners, we really appreciate you coming and finding us. We're on a variety of platforms, audio platforms, video platforms. If you are new to I Got a Guy podcast and you want to capture and catch up on any of the past episodes, I encourage you to go to igotaguypodcast.com. That's igotaguypodcast.com. You'll see a list of all of our previous episodes and a brief synopsis of each one of our episodes. So pick and choose the ones that could serve you today and serve you in the near term. But hopefully you get some really good information from all of our guests. My guests range from clients of mine, and my business is Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions. So I either have clients of mine on as guests or referral partners, all in an effort to help small businesses grow. And I love small business. My business is a small business, and I can appreciate and empathize, and I really I love working with small businesses. And any way I can, anything I can do to help small business grow, I'm going to do. And this is one way of me giving back and helping these businesses get their word out to a different audience. So if you happen to be a small business owner and you'd like to be a guest on the show, there's a way to make a comment or send in a request from the website, and it'll come to me and we'll have a conversation of how we can help. So love to have you participate any way you can. So thanks for being here. As you know, this show was really born out of the book called The Go-Giver. And every week I share a different law of stratospheric success that's highlighted in the book. And if you haven't read the book, The Go-Giver, I highly encourage you to do so. I think every small business owner needs to read this book because the way you grow a small business through referral networking is not from getting referrals, but it's by giving referrals. And that's really the focus of this book. So today, the law I wanted to touch on is one I don't share too often, but it's called the law of receptivity. And it's defined by the key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving. The key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving. And as you get to know our guest today, who's a returning guest, I think you'll see how that applies to how he serves his community. So I encourage you to enjoy that. Now, please welcome our guest this week. We have Joe Natal here from Exponential Consulting Services. Joe, thank you so much again for being a guest on our show yet again.
Michael, thank you for having me. Thank you for putting on this show. And I love that law, right? It's we're all about exponential growth. And if you are not open to giving and open to receiving, you don't get. It's not possible.
Right.
Right. So you have to be open to giving, but you also have to be open to receiving. And people in general, you're either somebody who wants to give, but isn't open to receive, right? I'm guilty of that, right? Want to help, but I'm good. I got it, right? And then you're the other side where it's like, well, what can I get, right? And who can give to me, and how can I get the most out of that relationship? And there's value in that for a short period of time. So the reciprocity of giving and getting is so important. So Thank you for bringing that.
Yeah, it really is. And it really helps those that give more when the recipient is eager to receive. And so that's really, I think, the whole point of this book, The Go-Giver, is you get more by giving more. And so I've gone through that. I've listened to this book numerous times, and it's just a great story. And so I encourage our listeners to read or listen to that book whenever you have a chance. But let's focus more on you, Joe. Tell us a little bit about Exponential Consulting Services and how you got started, and what your true mission is, and how you serve your clients.
Yeah, so I've been deemed, right, not given myself, but I've been deemed the title solutionist. Right. I'm somebody who prides himself into being a problem solver, but a problem solver at the level of root cause. right? So
Right.
it's not just, let's put a Band-Aid on it, right? That'll solve a problem, right? If you're bleeding, put a Band-Aid on it. But what caused the accident, right? There's a,
What caused you to bleed? Right.
broken wheel on my bike and I keep falling off my bike. Well, it's nice to put the Band-Aid on when you fall, but let's fix that wheel, right?
Right.
So that's my entire career, right? I've been in multiple industries. I've worked for, global, multi-billion-dollar global companies to startups and almost everything in between, whether it's, been as a direct employee or as a consultant. I've supported people from the ground up, and I've supported people that have had to shut their doors and turn their lights off. So I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly. We even created our own podcast called Workplace Theater, where we explore some of these things, right? The joy, the pain, the comedy of work, right? So we all have these things. And what we found is that there's a unifying principle in being able to get more, right? Now, I'll share a little bit about what more means to me from a pre-transformed phase to a transformed phase. So pre-transformation, I was working for a multi-billion-dollar international company, and we were growing like crazy. My little piece of the business, we went from about 120 million to about 280 million in a couple years. And it's huge, doubling of a business. That's, that's unheard of. It was a big cost personally, right?
Sure.
I was working 6-7 days a week. I think at one stretch I worked 48 days in a row, and my shortest day was an 8-hour Sunday that I was required to leave for some family function, right? And I did this when I was in my early 20s, so I had the energy to do it and the wherewithal to do it. It's why I claim to have a PhD in GSD. It's getting stuff done, right? This company, we had no business doing what we were doing, and the fashion in which we were doing it, and the speed in which we were doing it. And it was just because we had no quit. It was all grit. No,
Right.
some brains, but a lot of grit, a lot of guts. And looking back on that time, right, I came to this conclusion that this company was obsessed with this conversation of more, right? And more being, we just keep growing, just do more, work more, right? Get more, earn more, but without a real true vision or purpose, right? We would put together budgets, and that was one of my functions as a regional manager, was to put together our annual budget and to work with all of our cities and doing that. And one year in particular, we had exceeded our budget, exceeded the revenue, exceeded the EBIT numbers, checked all the boxes to get our bonus at the highest level. Well, it wasn't good enough. Why? They were selling the company. We didn't know they were selling the company, right? And so my region was killing it. We were just hitting all of our targets. Other areas of the company were not.
Sure.
So because we didn't all hit our numbers, I didn't get my bonus that year. And I sat and I thought about this, and I said, all right, so I keep giving more because I'm supposed to get more. And I didn't get more. What's going on? What's the problem? Like, more is supposed to lead to more. And as a 20-something-year-old man, I realized more without a vision is not more. It's something else. And I came to several conclusions on negative words that it means. I won't share that with your audience, but it wasn't good, right? It wasn't good. And so, as maybe mid-20s at this point, I realized without vision, there's no point in doing anything. If there's not a purpose to what we're doing, if there's not an end goal in mind, you're on the hamster wheel, right? And so I changed what I was doing and how I was doing it, and began this path to where I am today, right? To where this company is, to where we're growing, to what we're launching, and to this unifying principle. Right? And this unifying principle is, if you want a greater impact, right? And that's whatever you define impact, whether it's finances, freedom, friends, a monument, a building, a better relationship with your kid, whatever that impact is, there's three principles to it. It's a vision, it's communication, and it's execution. And when those things come into an alignment, that's how you win. That's how you get more, because it's super clear and it's understood why you're doing what you're doing. There's no doubt about it. You're having a busy day, you can see the future in mind. And if you're having a busy day and it's pulling you away from the future in mind, it's a lot easier to make decisions that relate to saying no, right? Like, this is not the right opportunity. This is not the thing we should be spending our time on.
Right.
Right? This customer that's in front of us, maybe this is not the right opportunity for us, right? Especially your small growing business. You have to look at who you're getting into bed with. Everyone is a relationship. Everything is a relationship. Your customers are a relationship. Your employees are a relationship. Your vendors are a relationship. Your family's a relationship, right? It's all about relationship. And we've created a platform that we call human-centered engagement. And that platform is what we use as the basis to realign all of these things, right? And so we can get into that in a minute. But I thought would be really interesting, right? Instead of me pontificating on all these different options and variables and bragging about myself, right? What I thought might be interesting, Michael, is let's play in real time. Like, give me a scenario and we'll walk through what this alignment looks like and utilize human-centered engagement to do it.
Sure. Well, and so let's recap those three fundamentals. You said it's vision, communication, and execution.
Correct.
Okay. And so I want to make sure that resonated with our audience, because that's really fundamental. And you have to have all three of those components in order to realize the success that you dream of, whatever that success is.
Absolutely. And when they're working in tandem and alignment, right? When I see the outcome in mind and I can communicate that with other people, the likelihood of us doing the things that need to be done to have that vision in mind increases exponentially, right? There's many proverbs, but I will use a Japanese proverb because it's of all the proverbs, it's still my favorite, right? And it says, vision without action is a daydream, but action without vision is a nightmare. And how often are we out doing things and investing hours and investing resources and investing energy to realize, man, we just went in the wrong direction, or we were spinning our wheels, or whatever the case was, because we didn't understand the purpose of what the day brought.
Right. That is so true. And I work with a lot of small businesses in my business, my GPS tracking business. My primary focus are small and medium-sized businesses. And so I get the opportunity to speak to a lot of business owners. And a couple things are in common with all of them. When you start out a business, many business owners believe that there's, you never met a dollar revenue you didn't like. And, and that could be true at some point. But sometimes there's a cost to that dollar revenue, which is far greater than what that revenue really represents. And we've all had situations as business owners where you're working 12, 15, 16 hours a day, 5, 6, 7 days a week. And you do feel like you're spinning your wheels, and you don't have the time to recharge your batteries and to relax and spend time with your family and do those types of things. And a lot of it comes, I think, comes from the fact that you're chasing things that are wasting effort.
There was an analogy a friend of mine told me many years ago. He was a carpenter, and he said, "I'm so busy that I have to keep sawing this. I have a big pile of wood, and I got to keep sawing the wood. I can't stop. I'm too busy. I'm too far behind. There's a point where my saw blade's dull. And so I work even harder to get less accomplished. He's like, if I would just stop and sharpen my blade, things would go so much faster. Right. And so that's, I take that to heart. His last name was actually Hart. That's great. It's if you don't stop and take that time to evaluate what you're doing, right, and look at the purpose and the reason of what it is, you're just working hard to work hard. And
Right.
I've worked hard. There's a tremendous value in it. I'm not throwing shade at anybody that works hard. God bless you for working hard. But if you can work hard with purpose, then you make an impact.
Yeah, and I think depending on the stage of your business, you have to work hard. You have to be passionate. You have to, and sometimes those battle scars really do pay dividends down the road. You have to be open enough to realize, gee, that's not the best use of my time. Let's shift it and adjust. And you have to always be adjusting your sales, otherwise you end up going in circles.
Yeah,
So yeah.
and I think the other component of that, right, is as you own the business or you're leading the business and you do the work, you're a lot more credible when you're asking somebody to do something that you have or you will do, right? You have done it or you will do it or you're currently doing it. You're a lot more credible, right? And those battle scars, that's where they really show value. And it does. It helps you evaluate what am I doing that's, it takes a lot of time. It doesn't require a lot of skill. Maybe this is something that I can either hire somebody to do, or what I find, especially at certain levels of your organization, find the right partner, right? It might be a vendor relationship. It might be a fractional HR person or a fractional CFO, right? It doesn't need to be a full-time FTE, right? I see this all the time, companies hiring an HR person. And then they're asking them one person to have every function of HR. They might be a good recruiter, but they might stink at benefits, right? Or they might be great at benefits and they stink at employee relations. Probably not likely, but it's like that. So there's all these evaluations too to make to say how can I best use my time and how can I best spend my money? Sometimes you spend a little bit more to get a lot more. And that's something that sometimes is hard to realize, right? Especially when the business is small or things are tight or we're unsure of what might happen in the future, right? I want to hire an HR person at $60,000 a year, and hopefully they do everything and do it well. But I'm not going to spend $75,000 to go hire a fractional HR company that has 25 people working for their company that actually can do everything well because they split it out through the experts within their company, right? That's the trade-off you get. But what do you get at the end of the day? That investment, that $15,000 investment, which is actually probably less once you pay the HR person their benefits and their vacation and all those things, right? It's probably a wash financially. And then what do you get for value, right? But again, you have to know how to communicate. If you communicate the right way, you share that vision with whether it's an employee or a vendor, you're going to get so much more out of the relationship.
Well, and the other component that's important as business owners get to this stage of deciding, how do I outsource or delegate certain tasks? Because but I work with a lot of trades, and many of these business owners, they're good at turning their wrenches. Whether they're plumbers, they're electricians, they're drywall people, they're tow truck drivers. They know their craft, but they don't necessarily also know the back office functions, the HR, the accounting, the bookkeeping, the marketing, the sales. And so it's a lot of times, and I find it even in my own small business, sometimes I'm just getting to the point of outsourcing some of these functions, because there's the law of diminishing returns. So you end up working harder at something you're not really good at, when you could be spending that effort doing something that you are good at and grow the business even faster if you let go of something you're not good at. And so I think a lot of business owners are in that mode of, gee, everybody's just got to be all hands on deck, do what you need to do to get that project out, get that um, that customer satisfied, and then we'll figure it out later. So everyone's always kind of jumbled around, and I think you end up in a situation where you're almost spinning your wheels or sliding backwards.
I'm also a serial entrepreneur and have a number of ventures that I'm involved with. And we just had a situation this past week with one of the ventures and dealing with a customer. And we were trying to do everything we could to make it right with the customer. And we started looking at what the sale was and what it was going to take to make it right. And realizing that the customer really was not invested in who we are and what we do. And we sent the customer a refund. So, sorry, we can't serve you.
Right.
Right. And we did that so that it's just, that was the best way to solve the situation. Right. We weren't able to make the person right because they weren't right. What they were asking of us was not what we could do. Right. And it's really hard to make that situation when there's revenue on the line and everything's about turning money, turning a profit. Right. But we had to make a decision that said, is it worth the effort to jump through the hoops for somebody who's really not invested in our company? Right. This is a one-time customer who doesn't really fit. And they're not going to be satisfied. So we just gave this person their money back.
Right.
Just said that. It's like, it just seems like ultimately you're not going to be satisfied. We're sorry we couldn't help. We made you whole.
Right.
Right.
Well, that's a humbling experience. But when you step back from that, at some point in the future, could be 6 weeks or 6 months from now, you're going to say, well, that was a great move because it allowed us to kind of free that burden. Because it becomes a burden on your mind, especially when you know that it's not the right fit and you're trying to cram a square peg in a round hole. It's frustrating and it takes your focus away from what you do really well.
Right. And this is a B2C venture, right? Where this transaction with a consumer, if we don't handle it well, right? We go and we fill the order and it doesn't work right or whatever the case might be, or I don't want to go into details just in case, right? I don't know that they're listening or not, but
that's fine.
It's 6 weeks from now, even though we have a 14-day return policy, 6 weeks from now, they're not happy. We're getting negative reviews.
Right.
Right. And that's a legitimate negative review.
Right. Right. So yeah, it's you gotta know your lane and stay in your lane and execute well.
Right.
And I know you have a lot more to say about this topic. We're gonna take a short break here, Joe. Hear from our sponsor, and then come back and we're going to continue talking. I got a whole series of questions for you, and this it's a great conversation. And I think it can help so many small businesses that may not be able to get out of their own way at this point because they're overwhelmed. So let's continue with this conversation. But before we do this, share the best way to contact you if somebody needs to reach out to you. Phone number, maybe email address or a website.
So hit us up on our website, grow, GROW, exponential, EXPONENTIAL.com. You can contact us through that website. And then for your listeners, when they go onto your site, right, they actually log in, we'll get that information so that they can plug and play. They can click a link and email me or whatever the case might be.
Yeah, I'll have that on the website. Your website information on the screen for our viewers and in the show notes for our listeners as well. And it'll be on definitely be able to link to you directly and get connected. And obviously, as I say every week to our listeners, certainly mention I Got a Guy podcast to Joe when you do call him, so he knows where his calls came from. So that'd be Really helpful. But let's just stick with us for a minute or so. We're going to hear from our sponsor, and then we'll come back and continue with Joe Natal from Exponential Consulting Services. Thank you for listening to I Got a Guy podcast. I hope you're getting a lot of knowledge from this week's guest. But now a word from our sponsor. If your business uses heavy equipment as part of its daily routine, sadly, I don't need to educate you on the reality that this equipment has been the focus of many local thieves either. Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions works with business owners that own commercial vehicles and heavy equipment. We help these business owners enhance their growth and profit through the use of GPS tracking technology. Recovering a stolen asset is just one way we contribute to the bottom line of the business. Our GPS tracking units used in heavy equipment are weather tight so they can handle the elements and even have an internal battery to continue to report its location should the battery in the asset be disconnected. We have several examples of the benefits of GPS tracking in heavy equipment. Reach out to Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions for a detailed discussion about our options and to see if it makes sense for your business. You can find Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions at precisefleettracking.com. That's precisefleettracking.com. Or call us at 847-865-6008. Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions. GPS tracking made simple. Now, back to the show. Okay, we are back. Thanks for sticking with us. I am Michael Drelichars, host of I Got a Guy podcast. And today we are speaking with none other than Joe Natal from Exponential Consulting Services. And thus far, we've had a great conversation talking about, some of the challenges small businesses feel and realize and live through every day. Joe, you're a serial entrepreneur. I've had a few businesses myself, and I know the pains of small businesses. I also know the glories of a small business. So it's and there's so many small businesses in the country, and that's one of the reasons that I do this podcast is to help small businesses, help my guests grow, and help our listeners grow through participating with our guests. But as we were talking before the break, there's sometimes you have to be able to take a step back from your day-to-day grind and take a look at are you maximizing your efforts and doing the best thing you can yourself, or is it best to outsource or delegate certain tasks? And that's really where you come into play, right?
Absolutely. I'd helped my dad do this with his business a number of years ago. So even as a teenager, it was just something. It's ingrained in who I am.
That's awesome.
It's a gift and a curse.
Yes, it can be.
Right. Yeah, because if you want to hear, if you're interested and you want to hear how to be better, we can have those great conversations. But are you willing to kind of deal with the truth, right? And so, Michael, I think about your business, right? Precise Fleet Tracking, right? With those GPS trackers, that's, like, where's your equipment? This is where it is. Is it where it's supposed to be? No. Now what? Right? Now what? If it's where it's supposed to be, everything's good.
Right.
Same thing as running your business. If everything is where it's supposed to be because you have a vision, you have a plan, let's have a conversation. I want to hear how things are going. You tell me how you're doing it.
Right.
Tell me so I can help inspire other people.
Right. And when it's going really well, you need to be able to take a step back and celebrate that success.
Absolutely.
It doesn't happen every time, but there's a lot that can be learned from that.
Right. And and when things are not where they're supposed to be or where you want them to be or where you think they should be, that's the best time for us to have a conversation. Right. And so a few weeks ago, I was talking to a business owner, and they were concerned about the economy, right? Where there's a lot of influx, there's an election coming, and all this kind of potential upheaval,
right,
into what they do and how they do it, right? And so he's looking at potentially cutting 10% of his cost. Well, that means cutting some of his staff.
Sure.
And we talked about why, and it was the concern of, the trying to get ahead of the economy and this, that, and the other, and businesses changed, and it's probably something they should have done, last year, and it's just they're going to do it now. And I said, what if we spent an hour, just an hour, and I'll give you the time, right? And rather than cutting cost for your business, What if we relaunched your business? Because it sounds like there's some opportunities that you want to explore, but you haven't been able to. And we had that conversation. And rather than going through with the original plan, which was just straight out cut 10% of the cost, which the reality of that, if you've ever been exposed to cost cutting, right, there's always panic from the employees, and that panic goes to your customers, and that panic goes to your vendors. Right. It's not a right sizing, right? A right sizing is explaining what your vision is for the company, right? Where you're going in the future, what you might not be doing, what you're doing today that may not be an opportunity in the future, right? Repivoting and expressing that vision. Right. And so by the good graces, we had this conversation, and it's leading to a relaunch of this company. Same brand, same people, same everything, but with a refocus, right? And there was an employee, as we followed up and relaunch of this relaunch, right? The communication phase, right? We did the vision. Now it's being communicated. There was an employee that was not performing, just not performing. It wasn't a fit for the current business. But based on the trajectory of where they're going, this person is a perfect fit to get the first phase off the ground. So this was somebody that prior to this conversation, prior to this realignment, was likely going to be terminated. And now they're an asset.
Sure.
That's what's possible when we stop, we pause. And it was literally an hour conversation. And for 45 minutes, I just asked questions. And in the last 15 minutes, I took all the answers and all the responses, and I just kind of put them back together and represented what was said. Not my ideas, his ideas.
Sure.
And he's like, he thought they were my ideas. Like, these are your ideas. This is what you said. I'm just listening. Right. And so, as I alluded to before, we created this framework called human-centered engagement. Right. And human-centered engagement is not our term, but the person who coined it has disappeared off of the internet. So I can't give credit to the first person that coined human-centered engagement. It was a college paper somewhere. But our process and everything that we do is completely different. Right. And so human-centered engagement, in the way that we've designed it, is based on 5 pillars. Your first pillar is listen. Your second pillar is connect. Your third pillar is value. Your fourth pillar is trust. And your fifth pillar is challenge. Right. And so the process in which we go through these things, I always start by listening. But I listen with intent, and I listen with care. And what I'm listening for is the ability to connect with you. What's important to you? When I start to know what's important to you, your value system becomes very apparent. Right? Dr. Henry Cloud has a new book out about trust. And his book is really about value. It's really about understanding value. Right? And what leads to trust.
Right.
And this is, I'm giving the keys to the kingdom away. When you know who somebody is, when their value is seen, and they see you as somebody that understands their value and appreciates their value, this thing called trust that everyone says is really hard to create, takes a long time, blah, 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 blah. The truth is, it's binary. If you have relationship created on mutual trust or mutual understanding, right? People being seen, valued, and appreciated. Trust just exists. It just manifests.
Mm-hmm.
It's a feeling, right? It's not, do I like this person? Do I give this person my car, right? Like, Michael, I would trust you with my car. Why? Because I've seen your GTO. right? But if I know someone and I've seen their car's got dents on it, right? I'm not giving them my keys.
Right.
But that's also trust,
Right.
right? We say trust is, oh, well, I can give you my keys to my car. No, trust is, do I know that I can give you the keys to my car? That's what trust is, right? And when trust is there and present, there's an opening to deal with challenge, right? So many businesses in general, small, medium, large, Fortune 500, Fortune 10, right? First startups, we're told to challenge people as leaders.
Mm-hmm.
But when we don't have relational equity, that challenge falls on deaf ears, right? It becomes another problem that somebody else is tasked to solve. You're dumping on me. Why is your problem my problem, right? But when we establish trust, these challenges become something that we want to take charge of, right? We want to help people solve, right? And I do this with my teams, right? As we teach human-centered engagement and all these things, I get to a point where I tell them, just tell me something crazy. Tell me something crazy, right? Give me a crazy idea. Right. And I had one gal say it was, negative 10 degrees outside. And she goes, crazy idea. Let's go swimming today. And I said, well, tell me about that. She's like, well, I love summer. I miss summer. All of a sudden, right, that follow-up question of tell me more about that, right? That's crazy. Like, no one's going to go outside and go swimming in negative 10 degree weather. Right. You can backdate it. We live in Chicagoland, so you know what the day is. And the reality was, it was like, I miss summer. Today's so stinking cold that I just miss summer.
Sure.
And we got to the point of the challenge, and I said, well, what if we go over to the park district and go hit up the indoor pool? And it was like, oh, duh, let's go do that. Right? Let's go do that. That makes sense. And we can do it. And it's feasible and reasonable.
Right.
Right? What was crazy became feasible and reasonable. Michael, you want to venture how long that conversation was?
That was a pretty short conversation, I bet.
2 to 3 minutes. Yeah. 2 to 3 minutes.
Well,
and
yeah, and it's interesting because taking that conversation and drawing a parallel to a business owner and their challenges. Sometimes you're so deep and you're so close to everything, you can't see the forest for the trees. So having you as an outsider with your skills, obviously, to just pull them back from the edge and seeing the bigger picture, you can come up with a solution that's like, oh, why didn't I think of that? And it's not.
Well, you did. You just couldn't put it together because you're so much in the weeds.
That's right.
And that's reasonable. What drives me crazy is that people get on themselves like, well, I'm smarter than this or I'm whatever. It's so easy to do. You get so entrenched in what you're doing. I mean, this human-centered engagement was literally one of my business partners pulled it all together from hours of my ranting, right? I'll do these stories and I'll just talk about stuff and I'll start ranting, right? Like I've had training in Six Sigma, but what drives me crazy is change management. Why? Because change management without a vision is just like changing stuff to change it.
Right.
You should call it try management, not change management. Right. We're going to just try this or try that, right? And so I was like, if everyone just realized what we're dealing with are challenges, right? And if we can get everyone around the challenge, we'll have the buy-in, right? And when you have buy-in, you create momentum. But it's the process to even getting to that challenge, So I'm saying these things, and the next day it sends me human-centered engagement. Like, hey, I've been taking notes. Here's what it looks like. And that was the first iteration of human-centered engagement. And we've been trying this and testing this thing and beating it up and throwing it through the ringer and giving the most crazy scenarios and, taking two people that just absolutely have a disdain for each other and using human-centered engagement to ask questions like why, right? And you come to the conclusion they have two different value sets.
All right.
Right? If one person values time and the other person values money, And there's not an intersect, right, where that person that values time sees money as an avenue to create time, and the person that values money doesn't see time as an avenue to create money. You have an impasse.
Right.
That's okay. Don't beat yourself up for it. You just have an impasse of value.
Sure.
There's other things to connect on in the future. You know that person that's about money as their first value, their primary value, when it comes to creating money or saving money, that's the person to talk to, right? And vice versa, when it's time related,
right,
that's the person to reach out to, right? You start realizing your time is shorter, there's something to do. Here's somebody that might, I think Jeff Bezos said it, right? He loves to hire lazy people, right? Because they're trying to find the fastest way to get something done.
Yeah.
Right. There's value inside of where people are at. But if you're not in the same place, of course you're going to butt heads.
Right.
Of course. Don't try to sway them to your side. Right. And don't feel like you have to be swayed to theirs.
Right.
So yeah, this is all what we do inside of human-centered engagement. We can, based on your time, Michael, we can go through a scenario, or I can tell you about the workshop we have coming up. So you let me know.
Well, let's talk through a scenario, and we can touch on the workshop as well. But let's talk through a scenario, because I want people to really understand, because this is an interesting topic that for a small business owner that is stressed out, that is overworked, may not take the time to think about. And I want you in this discussion to help somebody kind of change their perspective a little bit and open their mind, because these small business owners are all really smart people, but we all need help in certain areas. And I think you can do that. So let's talk through a scenario.
Absolutely.
Like a lot of small businesses, you have your team of folks, and everyone's doing multiple jobs. You got, wearing multiple hats, just simply wearing multiple hats, and, not being good at accounting, but you have to do the bookkeeping and the invoicing and inventory and customer service, and all that. You have to do sales as well. And then you have to, take care of some returns and, that kind of scenario. So let's just talk through, how a small business would like divide up these roles and get their arms around it.
Yeah. So again, we're gonna start by listening, right? And so we're gonna listen to the tasks, and we're gonna listen to the people, right? So we're gonna listen. We're gonna jot down all those things that need to get done, right? And then we're gonna listen to folks. And one of the exercises that we do, right, is something that we call your greatest attribute, right? So what is it that you do and you do well, right? And we may start with something like, well, I'm funny, right? I've my sense of humor, right?
Sure.
So I'm funny. Okay, great. Right. And we go through this exercise, and people start to see who they are. And then we go a level deeper. Right. And you can keep going deeper, right? I love Gallup Strength Finder. Right. It's I think the full assessment's $50 or $60. And it starts to tell you, right? It starts to give language to things that you feel or you think, but you don't know how to communicate, right? So when I did Gallup, and this changed my life, right? It's made my PhD almost invalid. Well, I'll share that in a second, right? So I am strategic, inclusive, analytical. I have ideation, and I'm a maximizer. And that 4 and 5 might be flipped. I couldn't find my report, right? I'm also an achiever, and I'm also an activator, right? 6 and 7. So when it comes to thinking big projects and getting things started, getting things off the ground, that's how I'm crafted and created, right? And so I share that with other people so that they know who I am. And then I give space for them to share those things so that they know who they are, and I know who they are. After that, we go through and start to see, based on what people said, their value, right? How do they fit the challenge? And then we go back and we see, where do they connect in with the challenge? And when they connect in with this challenge, those are the things that we want to prioritize that's on their list, right? If somebody's more quiet and in the detail, right, we want to give them the opportunity to do some of these accounting tasks and some of these back office things, right? If somebody is more extroverted and gets energy by people, right, those are the folks that we want to have doing customer service or doing sales, right? So we want to match those things up as best we can based on your current team, right? Then we look at the holes, right? What holes do you have inside of the tasks that need to be completed and the people that are not necessarily suited for these tasks, right? And you go back in and you say, should we allow someone to take on this task even though it might not be their best, right? If they have a desire and it builds them up, gives them energy, we want to give them that assignment. If it doesn't, if it's going to steal from who you are and what you do, we want to find somebody else to take that place. Because ultimately, what everything's about in the world of productivity is energy. Everything's based on energy. If I go and I'm excited to do a presentation, it's going to give me energy. That energy fuels me for the next thing, right? If going through and solving a problem, right, being called in to figure out what's going on and deep dive into it, I might work 80 hours that week, but it might be time that gives me energy and fuels me, right? But if it's coming to like, hey, here's all the receipts and you need to document your receipts and this, that, and the other, blah, 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 whatever administrative task that I now loathe, right? It takes away my energy. So even if it's a half-hour task, I might need a 2-hour break. Right? Just mentally, emotionally, because I'm doing something that I don't love to do and it takes energy away from me. So those are the kinds of assessments, right? Whether we go through and do those together or not, those are the kinds of things to look at and look for, right? What are the things that people have a skill and a passion for? And what are the things that take away their energy, right? What are the things that they loathe doing for whatever reason? And don't make it a problem, because there's things, as a leader, right? There's things that you hate to do. How great is it when you find someone to do those and they love doing them and they do it very quickly, right? And as a consultant, right, we charge our bigger clients, we charge quite a bit of money. But the difference is, I'm not an employee on your team that's worried about saving my butt or being kind of living in the politics of your company, right? So although you might be paying me several $100s an hour, I'm going to come in and knock something out in 20 to 40 hours that an employee of yours might take 6 months to do, because they have other worries and concerns. If you call me to be an advisor, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm not worried about you firing me. I'm not worried about, if somebody else gets fired. Right? Yeah. So there's ways in which you can divvy up your work that makes the most sense for who you are, where you're at, and where you want to go. Right? And when you do those things, that's how you're able to create space and capacity to, one, breathe, and two, to grow.
Yeah. And I would imagine for a small or medium-sized business that, may have several key employees, key executive leadership team. It's probably most beneficial to have someone like yourself from the outside to come in without any preconceived notions or ideas about personality strifes or personalities in general, and come in with a very open mind to asking all the questions and just getting all the feedback. And
Absolutely.
so then the leadership team can look at your results and say, okay, here's an unbiased perspective of what we have. But oftentimes those leaders probably can't see all that granularity because they're too close to it all.
A few years ago now, and I can't believe it's actually this long ago, I was called in on as an advisor on a project. And I researched the company and I got the problem and I did what I was taught to do as a consultant. And that's before you walk in the door, you literally grab an envelope, right? And write on the back of an envelope what the solution is, right? You've done enough research to know the situation. You write the solution, and it's kind of a game you play to see how close you are to what the actual solution was. So I played the game. I was taught to play the game. I played the game. I wrote on the back of an envelope what I thought the solution was for this company. And I was like, all right, I'm going to walk in as the hero.
Sure.
Right. I did my job well, and I asked the questions, and I wore the advisor hat the right way. It was to my detriment because they came to the same conclusion that I'd written on that envelope. But they did it in a very healthy and organic way inside of the team. And the person that had the solution just needed the space to feel like they could say what the solution ultimately was for this company, right? How they can grow to the next level, how they can take advantage of a market opportunity in the right way, in the healthy way, right? That didn't cost them a ton of money to reinvest their company. They didn't have to create a new brand, right? They could literally partner with somebody and the customer was already in their Rolodex, was already buying from them. It was just about enhancing the relationship in a different way. Creating that psychological safety, right, is something that we just naturally do because of the nature of human-centered engagement. That's what happens. When we do these things, we come together, we start to build that trust. You get the psychological safety, and the person that thinks they have a crazy idea, it's actually not a crazy idea.
Yeah.
Right? It's like the perfect solution for that time, but in the context of a different conversation 3 days before, it was nuts. We can't do it. No way. Don't even bring it up. You're going to get fired.
Right.
And here's the solution. Just because we stopped, took a pause, right? And they came up with the solution themselves. And all I did was create the space and ask the questions. Right. And I was really disappointed because I was like, oh, here's a good solid 6-month project. I just need to give them the idea. Right. But they had it themselves.
Sure.
And what I really found was that's really how I want to be serving my time best. Right. I love getting in the weeds with the company, but I would rather you do what you do with your team and we help facilitate that conversation for a short period of time, right? Or give you the tools to be able to do that so that you can go and grow your company. And then when you're ready, you're now at the next phase of your business and you've gone from a couple $1,000,000 to $50 million and you're wondering what to do next. That's when I really want you to call me, right? That's
Right.
when it's now let's talk about how to really invest in your company.
Right.
And where do you want to go? Do you want to go from 50 to 100 or do you want to go from 50 to a billion? My preference, let's go from 50 million to $1 billion because what it's going to take for you to go from 50 million to 100 million is the exact same thing it's going to take for you to go from 50 million to a billion. And the likelihood of you getting to that billion is the likelihood of you getting to that 100 million is a lot more likely when we're shooting for a billion.
Sure.
Right. It's just that somebody wrote a book on it. It's like the 10X factor. Right. I can't remember who it was. I remember reading a summary about it at some point. That approach, right? That's where I really want to spend and invest time with folks, right? And the other place I really love to spend time with folks is in the M&A process, right? That company that I worked for, that I told you about in my early 20s, we turned over 5 times. 5 times we had new ownership, right? Or it was two companies coming together and growing. There's a big impact to doing that.
Sure.
Right. And I see companies there's a company I know very well that they're still not a client. They acquired a company that was 80% of their size. Right. So it's almost two equal sized companies. Right. The bigger company bought the smaller, I'm gonna use air quotes, right, smaller company.
Sure.
And what they didn't realize was the asset that they bought, the company that was smaller, had grown and already doubled their business within the last few years, had figured out an aggressive marketing approach that was really easy to implement, created a bunch of sales, and it was cutting edge. And the company that was bigger because of the virtue of where they were located, the areas in which they had territory, right? Mm-hmm. They had the West Coast, and for that company, that was big money.
Sure.
And they didn't have to sell, but now they have the entire country, and so even though in California it might have been handed to them on a silver platter, to do business in Massachusetts, you have to go out there and you have to hustle. People that need to know who you are and what you can provide.
Different culture out there.
Absolutely. And the company that you purchased figured that out, but they're not doing things in the way that you're doing them. Right? So what are you trying to fit when there's a merger and acquisition, right? And even as you bring on a new employee, right, there might be a way that you're doing things that the new person might have a better way.
Right.
Are you open to hearing those ideas? Right. So I'd love getting into those environments because it really shakes things up. And when you do things well, right, it's so let's call the numbers, one's a 5 and one's a 4, and they come together and they're a 9. When you do things well, it can become a 15. When you don't do things well, you become a 6.
Right.
Right. And that's what this company is becoming, is a 6. It's a 5 and a 4 came together, should be a 9, but they've done all the synergies and all these things, but they've actually lost opportunities. They're more profitable. There's more profit at the end of the day because there's more revenue, but it's not what it could have been, and it's not what it should have been. And when you're using VC and other things, it becomes problematic. So
yeah, no doubt. Well, yeah, there's a lot of opportunity for your skill set to help these businesses, and whether it be mergers and acquisitions or just a small business looking to grow exponentially, double their size or triple their size.
And Michael, a new hire is an acquisition.
True.
A new vendor relationship is a merger.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's just smaller. It's just a smaller scale. Everything's the same. It's just the scale.
Yeah, agreed. I was thinking about it in terms of buying another company, a competitor, essentially.
Yeah,
which has its own set of challenges built in.
Absolutely. It's buying several hundred employees or several vendors, right? It's just it's the scale is different, but the process is exactly the same.
Right. So it's and like I said before, as small business owners, oftentimes we just can't see the forest for the trees. And I know in my own business, I've been encouraged numerous times to outsource certain functions, and I'm just getting to the point of doing that. I've recently hired a virtual assistant to help me in some areas, and some things that I know I can do, but is it the best use of my time to do that, or am I better served by doing something else with that time that can grow the business faster?
Right. And remember, we go into business for ourselves for this promise of freedom. Right? You go into business so that you can have some freedom, financial freedom, so you can have some freedom in your schedule, right? So you can be able to jump on a podcast recording at the middle of a day during the week, right? And so you do all these things to have that kind of freedom, But if you're not putting yourself in a position to be able to have that freedom, because even though, you're skilled, you can do everything. And Michael,
Right.
I know you and what you have done and what you would do, you could do it all. But is it
Right.
worth it? Is it worth
Right.
it? Where do you want to invest your time? Where do you want to invest your energy?
Yeah. It is that is a really important component, is understanding, what's the best return on that investment of your time, because that's one thing we have a limited amount of time. We can't invent more time. So we have to
Yeah.
be really effective with the time that we have.
Right. And
And
it's one of those that we don't even know how much time we have.
right.
I don't know if I'm going to live to 100 or not. I'm not even going to throw anything out there, right?
Right.
But
No.
I don't know if
I,
I'm going to live to 100 or not. And so how do you invest that time? What impact do you want to make? And then, what's important to you? Do you spend
right.
time with those, that are around you, your family or your friends, or, the things that you're passionate about? If you're an artist, you're painting or,
Right.
whatever.
But even in my business, my GPS tracking business, I want to serve more businesses, because I know the value of what we provide, and to get in front of more contractors or towing operators or municipalities that have vehicles that we can help. I want to get more in front of more of them, because I'm very, very passionate about that. And so it's a matter of, okay, so what do I have to give up in order to be able to be in front of more of these? Because I want to serve more people.
Yeah, but I
And
but I need to do my invoicing, and my invoices got to get done.
that's
And
right.
it takes me 5 hours to do the invoicing because I don't really want to do this, and I don't know why I'm doing this, and the stupid program doesn't work right, and QuickBooks, why that right?
Right. Exactly.
And the
So
virtual assistant's like, I just took care of it, and it took me 15 minutes.
right. Exactly. So I think there's a lot of businesses out here that can see their value, see their growth, see the projections. They have, big aspirations, um, but they're kind of bogged down with these other tasks. So I really want businesses um, to that they're in this predicament, to reach out to you, to say, let's just have a conversation. Let's
Absolutely.
let's just see if it's a fit, because it might not be a fit for everybody,
And it's not. It's
but it
absolutely
might be a
not.
fit for a lot that haven't even considered it.
Yep.
And just hiring this virtual assistant that I hired, uh, I had an incredible sense of calm when I said, "Okay, let's go for it," because I'm confident that these tasks that I've been afraid that I'm not going to do well are going to fall by the wayside, and I'm not going to get them done. And I'm like, but that could negatively impact my business if I don't do that. So that's that's really the message I wanted to get across, is that you can help somebody take a breath and kind of refocus a little bit.
Right. And if anything, we'll throw. I'll get a Calendly link up to use for folks that listen to this podcast, right?
Yeah, we'll put a calendar link in the show notes. Sure.
Yeah, and so it's scheduled 30 minutes, right? And if you can't, if the if it needs to be early morning or it needs to be in an evening or on a weekend, shoot me an email, right? I love to talk to business owners. In worst case scenario, I can encourage you like I've encouraged my good friend here, Michael, and letting some things go,
Right.
being able to take that leap to say, if this is really something I'm going to do, I need to create more of me and less of the things that are not me.
Right. Right. Very much so. So, Joe, touch briefly on your upcoming programming you're rolling out here, because I know we're running out of time here today, but I want to make sure you have a chance to promote that as well.
Yeah, so we're making things really easy, simple, honoring your time, honoring your investment. We've created a workshop called Transforming Relationships. We go through the process of human-centered engagement. You'll actually get to learn things about yourself. You'll learn things about people around you. You'll go through it with a group of folks, right? They're workshops. They're designed for 10 to 12 folks at a time. We're launching the next one will be February 24th. It'll be virtual via Zoom, so you could be wherever you are, Florida, Costa Rica. It will be from 9 to noon Central. So, if you're in Hawaii, get a group of 12 together. We'll set up another time, right? That works for you. We'll set up a little bit later, but we're creating, and the cost is $500, right? It's 3 hours, $500. You walk away with this renewed sense of how to communicate with people, how to build a new relationship, how to enhance a current relationship. And if you really want to, you can repair a broken relationship. Wow. Again, if you want to, we'll talk about that mismatch of values, right? You might not want to try to repair it because somebody might have to give, right? More than they want to, but you have the option. If anything that you get out of your time with us is that you get options where you saw dead ends, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled, right? And if you're spending money with us, I hope it's options that you can execute upon, right? Sure. But those conversations, all I really do is help you see different options. I wish it was more than that. That's the secret. That's all I'm doing. That's all you hire me, you talk to me, whatever the case might be, you get options where you didn't have options before.
Right.
And maybe some encouragement to take the leap on executing one of those options.
Yeah. That's tremendous. Joe, make sure we put a link to that event in our notes as well.
Absolutely. And it will be, it should be available on our website.
Which is growexponential.com.
Growexponential.com.
Okay.
It should be under the event page on our website. And we're also in the process of doing things, right? We've built our own website instead of outsourcing it. But we did that for purpose. There's some things we want control over because we weren't getting control over some things in the past.
Sure.
Right. It might take, for a new event to take 3 weeks to get put up to our website was just not, that doesn't work. Right. So even in your vendor relationships, you want to make sure that you're getting the right vendor.
Right.
And somebody, especially if you're small, sometimes it is better to do things yourself.
Right. Yeah, there's trade-offs, and but that's part of the evaluation. And the reality is, as a small business yourself, you're able to eat your own dog food and use your tools to make sure that you're maximizing every minute, every day.
Absolutely.
And focused on the most important tasks and growing your business. So
and I'm not immune to, I'm eating the dog food, and sometimes I throw up the dog food and go back to just like what the dog does, right? Like, why do I keep doing that? So, none of us are immune.
No, but that's fine. As long as we're open-minded to accept the change and the recommendations, the world is open to us.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's tremendous. I'm so proud of what you're accomplishing here, Joe. And I really implore our listeners to reach out to you to just to connect and engage with you, have a conversation, a quick 30-minute conversation, maybe participate in your event coming up in February, but just have a conversation, see how you might be able to help them get to that next level, whatever that level might be,
right?
And whatever benefits they're trying to realize, whether it's less stress, more time with their family. Growth in their business, resizing, relaunching a business. There's a million different ways that can go. And like I said, sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. So I know you can help them do that. And I so encourage our listeners to reach out to you to do that and see where it takes them. Thank you for being here.
Those kind words.
Yeah, I really, really appreciate your participation today in our podcast. And any last words you want to share with our listeners?
You're in business for a reason. It's for yourself. It's for your customers. It's for your employees, your vendors, everybody that touches your business. the greater connectivity you have on what that is for everyone involved, right? That vision, that complete vision, the easier it is to move everything else. The easier it is to communicate, the easier it is to execute, right? So investing that time to really get clear on the vision, really get clear on the why, always pays dividends.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is really sage advice. Yeah, focused on a vision, and you can execute on that. So that's awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. And to our listeners, as we wrap up the show here, just another reminder: if you happen to own commercial vehicles, Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions is the company that I run, and would love to help you. I'm very, very passionate about what we do. We've had tremendous successes. Um, we've been doing a lot with helping businesses retain their assets that have been stolen, trying to recover assets, and recently had a situation where we put trackers in some assets that were stolen. We were able to recover, help them recover, help the police recover these assets. They did not have to replace these assets, which would have cost them much more than what our annual fees are. So we delivered tremendous value to this client, and continue to develop or deliver value to all of our clients every day. So we're very passionate about this. If you want to know more about Precise Fleet Tracking, I encourage you to reach out to us. Our website is precisefleettracking.com. That's precisefleettracking.com. Or call us at 847-865-6008. 847-865-6008. So that's our plug. Again, Joe, thank you for being here. And to our listeners, thank you for listening, subscribing, and encourage you all to share this podcast with friends, relatives, neighbors, anybody that may own a small business that might benefit from this discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I hope you all have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care. Thank you for listening to I Got a Guy podcast. For past podcasts and more information, go to igotaguypodcast.com. That's igotaguypodcast.com. Please share this podcast on your social media feeds and tune in again next week to I Got a Guy podcast.